The other day, Apple debuted its newest version of iOS, that is, iOS 10. And a few weeks ago, Google debuted its newest version of Android, Nougat, aka Android 7.0. Both of these mobile operating systems have come a long way. Today they're a lot more polished, mature, and in some ways very similar. Apple's iPhone 7 and 7 Plus officially released to the public tomorrow, sporting iOS 10. Rumor has it Google will be releasing their Nexus lineup, possibly renamed from Nexus to Pixel next month in October, carrying Android Nougat. But today I have Apple's iPhone 6s Plus running iOS 10 and Google's Nexus 6P running Android 7.0 Nougat. Let's compare and contrast. Hi everybody, I'm Jerome Ortega from Jerome Ortega. Both the iPhone 6s Plus and the Nexus 6P have been reset to factory settings. That way we can see how the phone comes stock. The first thing I want to jump into is how much space each device eats up from the get-go. iOS 10 uses about 900 megs of storage, while the Nexus 6P uses about 600 megs. Both are very similar in size, and both have very clean mobile operating systems. Apple has stuck to its traditional icon layout. Its home consists of rows of icons with a dock down below. Android starts you off with icons in folders down below, the dock below that. I'm guessing the icons and folders are at the bottom row for easier access. When compared to the iPhone 6s Plus, it can be a bit of a chore having to reach for icons at the top. iOS doesn't allow you to grab an icon and place it lower. It has to stay in left to right, top to bottom order. Luckily, iOS has something called reachability. To do this, you double tap on the home button. You don't press down on the home button, you double tap. And the apps slide from top to bottom. For easier access. This also works in other apps in case you need to tap on something out of reach. It's a neat feature, especially for a physically larger phone like an iPhone 6s Plus. With Android, you can place your icons anywhere. You can place it from left to right, top to bottom like iOS, or just keep everything on the bottom. Or put everything in the middle. On a separate page. Or like me, I like to keep everything clean. And I leave all my apps in the app drawer instead. Android definitely has a more customizable layout in this regard. Both iOS and Android offer shortcuts to some of our more used apps. iOS uses something called a control center. To access, you just swipe from the bottom up. And if you need to, let's say, toggle Wi-Fi on and off, you just tap the icon. Or lock the rotation in portrait mode, adjust the brightness of the display, turn on the flashlight, etc., etc. Android offers the same concept, which they call quick settings. To access, you swipe from the top down. Toggle Wi-Fi on and off, turn on the flashlight, and if you dig down another level, you get even more settings. Adjust the brightness of the display. And the difference between this and iOS's control center is that these can be edited. For example, if you don't want Do Not Disturb on your quick settings and you want, let's say, Bluetooth instead, you can go ahead and click Edit, take Bluetooth, drag it over, move Do Not Disturb out of the first 5 icons, and now when you come down here, you have Bluetooth instead. What's more is if you wanted even more detail in that specific setting, all you have to do is hold an icon down. This can be accomplished in iOS as well, but some outside of Control Center. And that's actually using 3D Touch. So instead of tapping Settings, and then going into the battery, what you can do instead, you can just press down harder on the Settings icon, scroll up to battery, and then you're right in. In Control Center, you can use 3D Touch to dig down into apps like the flashlight and pick a different brightness setting, 3D Touch into the timer, as well as the camera. I think that's a great way to implement 3D Touch. But I still think it would have been nice if iOS allowed you to pick your shortcuts instead of predetermining them. Oh well.
Just slug to your chest, man.
When swiping over to the far left on the home pages of iOS 10 and Android Nougat 7.0, you're now presented with similar setups. iOS in the name of widgets, where you can customize and configure weather, map destinations, reminders, and a lot more. And Android in the name of Google Now and Cards, where you can get information that's pulled from your mail, recent news that's interesting for you, your favorite sports teams, and like iOS, so much more. iOS carries a feature that I have always enjoyed on their mobile OS. If you scroll to the very bottom of a page, like a web page here in Safari and in Chrome, to get to the top of the page, if I wanted to do that in Android, I just scroll all the way to the top. But on iOS, all I have to do is hit the clock up top here, and it brings me right to the top. While we're still on the same page, I want to talk about one of the features that Android has called Now on Tap. How Now on Tap works is if you hold the home button on Android, you can get relevant information on whatever you have on your screen. So you just hold the home button down, and then you get information about the Note 7, which is up here, the Apple Watch, which is right here, the iPhone 7 review, and who actually wrote it, Nilay Patel, Canon M5. It's a neat feature to have if you're trying to look for relevant information. Other things to note are differences in the Settings app. If you look at iOS compared to Android here, Android offers a little more information inside the Settings app without having to actually dig further in. So if you look at the display, it shows you that adaptive brightness is on. You don't have that here. If you look at the sound, it tells you what your ringer volume is at, how much storage you have used, and how much you have left on your phone, your battery percentage. So if we wanted to dig into battery on both of these phones, you can go through the settings here, change whatever you need. But instead of hitting the back button to go back into the settings, hitting the back button up here too, if I'm in battery, all I have to do is swipe over here and I can just go to another settings a lot quicker. These aren't all mind-blowing features, and they're not supposed to be. This is more about efficiency inside an OS, and I just figured I'd share. To access notifications on iOS, all you have to do is swipe from the top down. From there, you can reply to messages or reply to emails. You can also use 3D Touch to trash the mail or mark it as read, and you can also use 3D Touch to clear all notifications. Android behaves the same way for notifications. You just swipe from the top down. You can also reply in the text message. You can expand an email. You can also reply to it if you'd like. On iOS, when you receive a text message, you can reply straight from the lock screen. What's nice though is you can keep this page open and just keep replying or just keep continuing your conversation here. It's not that you can't do it on Android, but on iOS you can continue the conversation in that same screen. It doesn't collapse and go away. The message goes away. I mean, I'm still able to reply, but I can't continue that conversation by keeping that window open. I get why they'd probably do that though, just so you can send your message and continue doing whatever else you were doing. I do like that you have the option on iOS though to continue the conversation or just exit out.
Making beats on a daily basis.
In Android 7.0 Nougat, you now have the option to clear all when you have a bunch of apps open. In iOS 10, you still don't have that feature. You still have to take every app and swipe up or down. Okay, I guess it's just up to clear all. While people say that you really don't have to clear all apps, part of me is kind of obsessive compulsive and I just like being able to do that. Android 7.0 has also implemented a feature called multi-window where you can split the screen up into two. You hold this button down, you'll get that second screen right here. You pick your app, and now I have the Play Store and I have Chrome below. You can also resize this window so one can be bigger than the other. And it also works in landscape mode. Android 7.0 also features an app switcher. All you have to do is double press and it will bring you back to your last app or recent app. So instead of, let's say on the iPhone, if you needed to go to another app, you would have to double tap the home button and pick the other app. On Android Nougat, it's just a double tap to go back and forth. You can still use this to go through other apps if they were open. iOS 10 and Android Nougat on the Nexus offer the best of what Apple and Google have for their mobile operating system. Clean software matched with hardware intended by their respective company. Both have their pros and cons. iOS's 3D touch features seem a lot more useful and welcome now in iOS 10. The integration of widgets on the left page is nice, while Android's more flexible customization, in addition to things like multi-window and tab switching, have really added a new level of use to its OS. Either one you can't go wrong. As time progresses, I feel like each one continues to learn and pick up things from the other. It might boil down to not what works better when it comes to software, but whose camera is better, which speakers are louder or of higher quality, or how much of a price difference between phones are we talking here.
Take a step into the limelight, stay fly like I'm stepping out on prom night. You ain't heard the boy Rockwell got it.
Just one thing, before you start leaving comments about, well, if you jailbroke it or if you root it, you could do blah, 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 and blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I know what you could do if you jailbroke it or if you rooted it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about stock iOS. I'm talking about stock Android. Leave the shit alone. And by leaving it alone, I mean, keep it to yourself, because that's not what this video is about.